Hello people and welcome to the second episode of the Lake Towers Park project. If you're new to the series and didn't watch the first episode, I started building in that episode a central plaza for the entrance of the park that contains an underground parking lot and was based on a real elevated plaza of neoclassical and Art Nouveau architecture from the 1930s up to the 1960s in the city of Valencia, Spain. That is my hometown. And it's also where the whole entrance and first area of the park is based from. In this second episode, we are going to tackle the center piece of the entrance area of the park. That is a huge building that you will see in this time lapse, and it's also based in one of the buildings of this same plaza that I made in episode 1. But this one is thankfully in place still. And it's the Valencian City Hall, so it's one of the many famous buildings of the city of Valencia. It's also pretty big in scale, but I'm going to make in this video, as you will see, only the front part with a huge terrace and two towers left and right, and then it has like a very big clock tower in the middle of the building. As you can see in the video, I'm starting with one of the towers at the side of the big terrace. And this tower is going to be broken into three different distinct parts, and you will see why in the next minutes of the video. The first part of this tower is like an entrance, a small entrance that is usually closed in the real building. And one of the interesting things I added to this building is that I used heavy stone coins to make the walls, and this type of scenery element is in reality used for the cornerstones of buildings. But in here, as you can see, I'm using to create some super big stone walls. What I like is that they actually look like the big stone walls from the real building. And also, I could have used perfectly the castle wall stones we have right now in the game, but there are some problems with them. And let me explain about them. We have right now like the walls. They are 4 meters high and 4 meters wide, but then we have like the wall. Every wall has then 2 meters and 1 meter height, and that's great because before Alpha 3 there were a lot of walls missing the 1 meter high piece. That is pretty important, and Frontier put it on the game during Alpha 3. But the real problem right now is that we are missing the different widths for the walls. So for example, for each wall we will need a 1 meter version and a 2 meter version, so we can use it to create door arches and window arches inside the walls, because right now we can make that the grid size has a quarter instead of a full 4 meters by 4 meters square, and only some pieces can use that system. And if you see right now the video, I had to get the walls, to get 2 meter walls of that type. I had to put that wall sideways and copy it 5 times, and that's just trying to play out the system so I can build what actually I want. Not even adding that that's a waste of user resources for the game, because I could have done that in one scenery piece and I had to use now 5 different scenery pieces. And getting back to the stone walls, as you can see, I could actually use it for these types of vanilla looking walls, because their texture helps. It doesn't matter if you use them sideways, because the texture doesn't look too bad. But actually for the stone walls, if I try to do that, the same thing, the texture is more repetitive and it will look a lot worse. That's why I would actually love if Frontier add it in the future, please, those 2 meters wide walls and 1 meter wide walls, because it will actually help us a lot to builders that try to make more complex buildings. And that's why the cornerstones, being only 1 meter wide, become pretty handy for situations like this. Now you can see I've been adding the second segment to the tower itself. And I was rambling about the wall sizes, so I couldn't talk about one of the most interesting things about that segment. Maybe you have noticed how I made the decorative part of the windows, and it's pretty interesting because I use it a lot, and it's not something I usually see from other users. I have talked about using a similar small piece, recolorable piece, in the episode 1 of this time lapse, but in this one I'm going to go a little bit further, and using the wooden decorative post that is also recolorable, you can make some amazing decorations, because turning it sideways, then sinking it into a wall, so you can only see the top part of the piece, that it's like a little square or diamond. You can create the tiniest details for your buildings. For example, in the window I made in the second segment of the tower, what I did was doing a decoration for the window, for the surrounding of the window, and you can use it in more complex ways, as you will see later in the video. So right now, for the third segment of the tower, I've created smaller pillars, because the ones we have right now in the game are too wide for what I wanted. That was decorations for the windows. So what I did here is getting the 4 meters wooden post, I painted it in grey, and then turning it with the angle snap on, 15 degrees every time, you get a rounded shape pretty similar to the pillars. And the good thing about it is that the hard edges of the wooden post makes like it has little dents in the pillars, so they really look like Roman ones. So now that I'm giving the final touches to this part of the tower, let me say that this type of buildings are the ones that take me most time to build, because of the way they don't use the grid system. They use like a freeform part, where I used a lot of buildings. This building is probably made with 20 or 30 different grids, and that's a problem after when you are trying to copy parts of it. And that's why mostly I take so many time to make these buildings. So I'm trying to get the hang out of it, of using more pieces that I can copy and paste all around the 4 walls of the building, even if sometimes the buildings are asymmetrical. And I think that getting the hang out of it is one of the keys to build these, make these time-lapse videos a little bit more fun and short. So now you can see I'm trying to make a new piece, and this piece is because I wanted a spherical primitive type of piece that we don't have in the game. I think what we need in the game are some primitives like spheres and cubes, but really small ones, so we can use them to create different shapes of any size. And what I here wanted to do was, using the ring, the pirate wall ring you have, I wanted to create a sphere. I had to move every time I rotate the piece, because it's not in the center. The gizmo, the turning gizmo, is not in the center. I needed to move the ring a little bit to create a sphere. And as you can see, at the end I didn't use the ring I made, because the sphere I made, because it didn't look right when I added to the pillar. So at the end I used one of the cheap tricks I usually make to create small rounded spheres, that is getting the school pirate light post. And you can use the top of the light post, that it's the school, to create a sphere if you turn it around. It doesn't work every time, because it needs to be far away from like the guest perspective, so you can put it at the top of buildings and things. But it's something we can use in the meanwhile, while we're waiting for something spherical, like primitives that I hope they add to the game. And with the twin towers by the sides already finished, that are not completely finished because I will add some decorations later in the video, I started making the central facade of the building. This part of the building has a huge terrace in the middle of it, and this terrace is actually used for different festivities and important events. Politicians, famous people and other festivity representatives, where they make the speeches and also watch one of the big events that one of the Valencian, the most famous Valencian festivity has, that is called Fallas. Maybe you've heard about it. And they do like a pretty big firework show in the middle of the plaza. And this firework show, it's done at 2 p.m. every day from the 1st of March to the 19th of March. That is when the big festivity of Fallas finishes. And what they do is the Fallera Mayor of Valencia, that it's basically the queen of the festivities, from the top of the terrace shouts in Valencian, that is the second language of the Valencian community. She shouts, "Señor Pyrotechnic, pot comenzar la mascletà." And that basically means in English something like, "Mr. Pyrotechnic, you can start the mascletà." So when she shouts this, the pyrotechnic, the master of pyrotechnics of that day, because each day has a different pyrotechnic company throwing the fireworks show, starts basically the show of that day. That it's around 5 minutes in duration, it depends of the day. They start with a lower powder count the first days, from the 1st up to the 15th, and the 15th to 19th, that is the big days of the festivity, they put more gunpowder in the show, so they're usually bigger ones. And the big difference of this Valencian show, compared to the fireworks shows around the world, like Independence Day of America or any Disneyland show, it's that it's not at night, so it doesn't focus on the beautiful lights that the fireworks give, but it focuses on the sounds and the rhythms you can create with those sounds. So there's no music either. So each of these pyrotechnic companies that throw fireworks at the mascletas, what they try to do is amp up what the other company does, to get louder sounds and better rhythms with the fireworks. And that's something that the majority of people that live in Valencia love about it. And also the tourists, because Valencia turns from a 1 million population city to a 3 million population with the Fallas festivities. And that means that inside this plaza and its surrounding streets, because there's so many people that can't fit all into the same plaza, there's around like 50,000, 100,000 people watching the mascletà each day. The show itself is divided in 4 continuous acts that are the start, that shows that it's when the show begins, with sounds and lots of visual effects. The body part, where it's the central part of the mascletà, and it's basically where the intensity starts to go slowly up, building in time, and are where they usually put the rhythm parts of the show. Then the earthquake part, that it's an amazing part where the fireworks fall into the floor and create this trembling sensation all around the plaza and the streets. And then it finishes with an air show that it's super intense, because there are fireworks that are not beautiful but are really, really loud, and are sometimes mixed with the earthquake part in the floor to give a better sensation depending of the company that throw the firework that day. And that's not even the main event of these festivities. I will talk more about them as we go along the episodes, because lots of buildings that I'm going to build in this time lapse, in this park, are very important to this festivity, as you will see. And as you can see, the terrace is already finished, the big terrace, so important to the mascletas. And you may have noticed some of the special things I did to make it, like making bigger pillars with the same Roman pillars. What I did is start with one pillar and then getting more pillars surrounding it, and they look pretty good because thankfully the texture doesn't mute itself with the other pillars. And I also made something that I quite liked, the result of it, and it's the ceiling of the terrace itself. It's made with one of the new roofs Frontier gave us with Alpha 3, one of the roofs of the castle. And what I did was, using the beams that they create below them, I used the beams as decorative purposes to make a square pattern, a grid square pattern in the ceiling of the terrace, that I quite like the result. And as you can see right now in the video, this is one of the interesting parts I was talking about before, about using the wooden posts to create decorations on the buildings if you hide these posts behind the wall. And it's basically using the top part of the pillar, that it's a small square, creating some figures that are called in reality mid-reliefs. If you don't know what a relief, or in this case a mid-relief, is, it's basically a sculptural technique where the sculpted elements remain attached to a solid background of the same material. You can see this a lot in old historic buildings, like with Roman temples and churches. And there's various types of reliefs. As I said, in this case we are using a mid-relief, and that is that you can see up to the half part of the figures that are made inside that sculpted material. But there's also low relief, for example, that the figures are sculpted inside the material, and high relief that is that the sculptures go a lot more outside of that material. And even if these two figures look like they are fencing, they're actually writing, like they are writing with a pencil, but obviously I can't make the pencil with the pieces we have right now in the game. And one figure represents the administration and the other figure represents the justice, but they both look very similar. More interesting decorations are done in this part of the video, and as you can see, basically I'm using the pieces, the squared pieces, as pixel art. And this time I made a shield, and this shield is the coat of arms of the city of Valencia. And even if in this building is made out of bronze, of different tones of bronze, the normal shield is made out of yellow and red stripes. And you can see at the top of the crown that I've made, the black crown, there's a dragon sculpture. And this dragon sculpture, it's supposed to be a bat, because the bat is one of the emblems of the city of Valencia, and I will talk a little bit later about it. And right now I'm making one of the things I like most of the final result of the building, and it's done, as you can see, with the small wooden corbel. And even if it seems I finished the left figure, when I was building this one in the right, I felt that it was better giving it more volume, because it felt too flat and it looked very bad. So I came back and fixed the left one, giving it a lot more volume, so it looked like a real 3D sculpture. And in my opinion, the final result looks pretty good, even if it's a little bit too blocky, because if you see from afar, they actually look like real figures. Well, I would love to have primitives that let me make better figures, but right now that's the only solution we have to make things like this, without resorting to using sculptures already made by Frontier, like the king or the jester. And by the way, those two figures I made are supposedly two female figures, and one of them represent the arts and the other represent the literature. And just some seconds ago you may have noticed that I added the final touches to the two towers, and there were also another 4 figures. These ones didn't look that good because as they are smaller, they are more difficult to create with the pieces we have. And even if I made them exactly the same in this building, in the real one, each one represents a different figure. In the left tower we have justice and prudence, and in the right tower we have fortitude and temperance. Finally, we are getting to the last part of the video and the last part of the building, and it's the main tower, a big and tall clock tower just in the middle of the building, with 4 similar walls surrounding the whole tower that contain one big window for each wall. Then a more decorative segment at the top of the tower with the clock itself and some columns. And at the top of that last part, there's like a cage of metal beams that sustain the bells of the tower. And this final part is probably the easiest part that I made from the whole building, and the fastest one that I made in very few. I think it was like an hour or an hour and a half. And yes, I'm usually that slow, but I feel that with this last part I was getting the hang of it, of the copy and pasting system the game has, with using the blueprints and using the grid system to copy fast some of the objects. And by the way, now that I have placed the clock itself, I have to say it's too big. I know there's a smaller clock, but it was too small, and that's something why I would like for some of the objects, not all, some of the pieces, maybe only the small scenery pieces and also the huge logos and billboards the game also has. Also, one funny thing about the clock itself, because it has both hands are marking the 12 o'clock, is that I thought that when I unpause the game, the hands will start moving like an animatronic or something. But no, they are not animated. And if they are not animated, it would have been best if the hands were randomly in different numbers. But that's maybe because they actually intend to animate it in the future. Let's hope so. To finish this time lapse, I will say that this building represents a magnificent entrance for the park. Something to inspire and excite the guests coming to the park. The elevated plaza that I made during episode number 1 was intended to be inviting to the guest. You come up from that underground parking lot, and it's all full of gardens and beautifully crafted with neoclassical pieces. And then you look up and see this huge towering building that hides what exciting and fun things the park has behind. And that's something I wanted to accomplish with this part of the park, not only being a little bit inviting with the gardens, but also awe-inspiring. At the left of this building you will have like a restaurant, inspired also in one of the buildings of the same plaza, and at the right side the turnstiles. I hope you liked the video, and I leave you with some cinematic shots of the building. See you next time!